Hey friends, it's another delicious day in the neighborhood with Joe and Lydia as we are taking a trip to Webster Groves and Rock Hill and Shrewsbury today to talk about their food scene, their history, and things that you need to know about eating out there. So come join us as we talk via Zoom today with our special guests and share some of our favorites. Come on along and listen. Well, I'm so happy that we are taking the time today to visit Webster Groves. So I know we talked about in our last podcast when we visited Kirkwood on our delicious day in the neighborhood visit. Um, we also talked about visiting Webster. So now we're hopping in our car, we're driving across, and now we are in Webster. So welcome to Webster Groves. It's a
It was a
delicious
whole
day.
two and a half mile trip.
2.5 mile trip, right? You blink your eyes and it's over, and you're here. Just
You
follow the
literally
train
could hop
track.
on that train. Yeah, just hop on that train, roll down. We do, we need. We should have a little. We should get a little thing on social. The little cart thing that the gold miners hop on, where they pump up and down. One of us on each side, and we should head on down to Webster Groves down the train tracks. That's what we should
I
do
love
for
it.
this
I
episode.
love it. Well, and I would have said that that would have been the better journey because if you ever look at the train track, it's curvy and it's windy, and I think it's downhill. So it would have been a roller coaster ride on the train tracks to get to Oh, but
I
I
love
love
it.
it. So, if you are joining us for the first time, we are taking a deep dive into the neighborhoods of St. Louis. And today's podcast is all about Webster Groves. And we are including in this one Rock Hill and Shrewsbury in sort of this wonderful bucket of the food scene in this area. So let's dive into it. We'll talk a little bit about history. So Joe, what do you know about Webster's? You grew up your whole life in Kirkwood. What is some of the things that were taught to you about Webster Groves?
I mean, really, since I was a child, it was always Kirkwood versus Webster. That's the thing. Having grown up in the Kirkwood area, we mentioned this in the Kirkwood podcast. My kids go to Kirkwood schools now. It's a heated rivalry, and it's one that is rooted in a lot of good competition based upon football games that go down to the wire, based upon food scenes that are very well balanced, based upon communities that are both very passionate and giving and wonderful to live in, school districts that are fantastic, and just well-rounded, great St. Louis communities. And that a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're so close. It's kind of a symbiotic relationship. Would you have Kirkwood without Webster, and would you have Webster without Kirkwood? I don't know.
I don't know. It's like the chicken and the egg debate. So, yeah, and to give context on the whole rivalry, because you've heard us talk about it a couple of times, it dates back all the way to 1898. So, if that gives you any indication of how long this is embedded in the culture of these two cities, it's in there. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the food scene and Webster. So, um, when I started to do some deep diving into the history of Webster, it's actually really interesting because, Kirkwood, according to the records, came first, but the land of Webster came around the 1800s. It was when the French and the Spanish took over, Louisiana purchased. But when we actually come to the, planting of the Webster Grove flag, that was back in 1896, so about 30 years after Kirkwood. But that was also the time when two cities, Old Webster and Old Orchard, kind of came together to increase their size dramatically. And you can see that nowadays when you go to Webster Groves. You'll notice that there's two pockets of businesses, right? So you'll see Old Orchard, which kind of butts up against the off ramp going to the highway and Big Ben. And then there's the Old Webster side, which is kind of right close to Lockhart, or not Lockhart, Lockwood. Yes, thank you. I am horrible. I am the driver that is looking for the landmark to base where I'm going, not the actual street name. Tell me north on this street, I'm lost forever. I would not survive in the old frontier, my friends.
You would die of dysentery.
I would. That's how I would die, my friend. but it's awesome because the neighborhoods have such a wonderful feel to it. But the food scene itself in those two pockets of Webster Groves is tremendous. They're booming. The amount of choices are awesome. And Joe and I have also talked a lot about these particular places multiple times on our podcast. I think there's some of the Balkan Treat Box is a great favorite. The Annex we've resourced a couple of times. They've got a fantastic BLT sandwich with that tomato fennel jam on there we talked about on our sandwich podcast. What are some of them for you, Joe?
Well, I think when we're talking about the Webster Groves area, I think we're going to lump in Shrewsbury and Rock Hill to this as well in terms of all the things that we're going to talk about, because those areas, they're all Webster schools. We can include Glendale when we talk about Kirkwood, so let's lump in those areas because they have some really rockin' restaurants as well. So if we're talking kind of what are the long-term pillars that we like to talk about on this podcast for a neighborhood, the first one I always think of, and this is just from my parents talking about it for years and years and years, is Cyrano's in Webster. Cyrano's was initially at a location closer to the city for many years. People in my parents' generation used to go there after dates and get ice cream. My mom used to get World's Fair Eclairs and all these just huge ice creams and Cherries Jubilee and Bananas Foster. And it's taken on and kept on going in Webster Groves in this really cool artsy kind of space with lots of mosaic tiles and different colors, and that same kind of panache for dramatic desserts. They have a great lunch and dinner menu as well, but they're really, really known for going in there for dessert. My wife and I just went in a couple weeks ago after a dinner, and we went there for dessert instead of having dinner where we were. And we sat down and ordered 3 desserts for the 2 of us to share because I was like, why not? Bread pudding was fantastic. I was jealous that I didn't order the Bananas Foster after I watched the table next to us where they prepare it table side for you. They roll a little cart over, they slice up the bananas, they put it on there, they light it on fire, it flames up, you can smell it and see it spattering everywhere. It's quite the dramatic, fun place to get desserts, and it is for sure a longtime pillar in Webster Groves.
Yeah.
Further on down, kind of closer back down to the old Webster area, CJ Muggs, right there on that corner of Gore and Lockwood. CJ Muggs has been there as long as I can remember. Very classic kind of bar and grill, lots of wood on the inside, classic place where you would go after a soccer game, after after a baseball game, with friends. Great corner patio, great corner sidewalk patio, place to be seen in Webster if you're going to sit out and have a power lunch maybe. It's really been there for a very, very long time and is really just ingrained in the Webster community. So
Yeah.
what about you? Any other long-term pillars?
Well, I think one that always stands out to me is Highway 61 Roadhouse and Kitchen. It is sort of like this Cajun Creole restaurant that is really inspired by the blues. It's a fun vibe. I mean, if you don't want to drive all the way downtown to go to the Oyster Bar, I think this is the Broadway Oyster Bar. This is a great sort of in the county place to go. I mean, they've got andouille sausage, they've got an orange bread pudding, they've got live music. So
did you say orange bread pudding?
They have an orange bread pudding. Are we finding out that you have a small affinity for bread pudding, Joe?
Maybe just a little bit. A little bit. Warm, saucy things go straight to my heart. I've actually never been to Highway 61 Roadhouse. I see it all the time when I drive by. I'm like, that place looks fun. It looks like Jimmy Buffett would hang out there. But I've actually never been. But I hear good things about it. So I'm excited now that you said orange bread pudding. Maybe we'll go there.
Yeah, well, that is on their basic breakfast buffet. So you just buckle in that seatbelt.
They have a breakfast buffet that has orange bread pudding?
Yes, they've got scrambled eggs and hash browns and bacon and andouille sausage. So
and orange bread pudding on a breakfast buffet?
Have you never had a bread pudding French toast or a bread pudding casserole for breakfast?
I mean, I want to say maybe I have, but not that's 2 miles from my house, Lydia. Let me down, friend.
Well, I will. Well, we'll go someday, and then you can tell the world about your orange bread pudding for breakfast.
Look for pictures, everybody, in the next couple of weeks of orange bread pudding from a breakfast buffet that I'm going to take my family to here soon.
Yes. No, I love it. I love it. Okay, so we talked about the long time pillars. Let's talk about the heavy hitters because I feel like Webster Groves is known for home of some of these really stand out, delicious, reputable restaurants. And I think one goes and definitely in this area, the Olive and Oak, O&O, Clover and Bee, all owned within the same umbrella. And I mean, the food is always phenomenal in any
I
single one
mean,
of them.
it's the heaviest of heavy hitters, I think. I mean, Olive and Oak, that's, I won't lie, that's the restaurant when people are like, hey, I want to impress somebody and take them to a restaurant somewhere in St. Louis County. Olive and Oak is usually one of my first recommendations. I've never had a bad meal there. I am constantly impressed. And they have my favorite dessert of any dessert that I've ever ordered. It's a big dessert episode for me,
Is it
everybody.
a
I'm
bread
sorry.
pudding? Is it a bread
No,
pudding? Should
it's
we
not a
start with
bread
that
pudding.
basis?
It is not. It is something you would not think that I would enjoy necessarily, but it's their butterscotch potted crab. And it's amazing. And you think like a pot of creme is like pudding kind of, but a little bit nicer. And they've got this salty granola crumble on top, and it is the saltiest, most savory butterscotch flavor you have ever had in your life. I go there just for that. I get the blue crab gratin dip. I'll get something that's a seasonal special and a butterscotch pot of creme every time. Voila, done. Happy to
Is
go.
that an Olive and Oak or is that Perennial on Lockwood?
No, that's an Olive and Oak.
Oh my goodness. Well,
Now
Perennial
they
is also
share
part of.
patios outside. Perennial's right outside the
Oh,
door there. So like, trust me, it's an Olive and Oak. I know my desserts. Don't ever argue with a fat guy about their desserts.
oh, I love it. Okay, well, perfect. So we know what to get when we go there. So we've got those 4 brands that are making up the streets of Webster Groves. But then you go a little bit farther, and 2 heavy hitter food trucks have found brick and mortar homes in Webster Grove. So we've got Gorilla Street Food, who is the pinnacle of Filipino cuisine, sharing the love of lumpia and adobo and pancit to the world. And then we go down a little bit farther, and we've got the Balkan Treat Box, which if you have not heard about the Balkan Treat Box, let's take you out from underneath that rock that you're living in and kind of just say this is the showcase that's nationally known for their just revolutionary introduction of Balkan food to not only just St. Louis, but to America and what they're doing. And I know they're one of your favorites, are they not? Like you're always there when they have
They
these
are. I mean,
collaborations.
James Beard, semifinal nominee, Balkan Treat Box, Lauren, Nalick. I think when you start talking James Beard nominations for restaurants in the Webster's area, we're talking heavy hitters here,
Yeah.
everybody. I mean, that's some real stuff, and crazy stuff too. I mean, like, so a little tidbit here, a little teaser for you guys. If you love Balkan Treat Box, so Steve Reichland's Project Fire, which appears on 9 PBS on Saturdays, their next season is coming up here in a month or two. And I'll post about it in the Chew and Lou Facebook page and Twitter feed. But his entire season of Project Fire, which is all about grilling, was filmed here in St. Louis at Union Station, and the crew from Balkan Treat Box actually filmed with him for one of the episodes. So that's airing nationwide on PBS stations with Steve Reichland's Project Fire. So they Balkan Treat Box, just transcends things for me.
They do. What I love is that just from like a food and a cooking perspective is that they put a wood fire oven into a food truck, which everyone's like, you're the crazy lady doing this. Like, how are you doing this? And they made
Yeah,
it
I
work.
love that story from
And
Food is
then,
Love. That was an episode of Food is Love where they were like, "Who's the crazy lady that's going to put a wood-fired oven on a truck?" And
yeah.
all, and all they were like, "That's Lauren," and they were like, "But it worked."
Listen, seeing the things that she has done, I don't doubt that she can accomplish anything. Like she can make any magic happen. And this week, actually, or I think for the next few weeks, they're posting that they're celebrating their 3rd year of being open, and they're celebrating with massive collaborations from other great food industries and restaurants here in St. Louis. So they're always a fun one to follow because they're pulling in other people from the restaurant industry to make collaborations with, and just definitely like
Yes.
entertain our taste buds throughout the whole journey.
They are
Um,
collaboration kings in the region.
they are, they are. Well, and then of course across the street there's the Annex, which if you haven't been there, it's a little fun. It's my fun place to go if I want to buy myself a new treat for my kitchen, because not only is it a great little deli and coffee shop, but it's a great little gourmet shop. And next to that is Frisco's. Um, and then sadly, what's not there anymore is the Serendipity ice cream shop, because they left their little store in Webster Groves, and now they're down at the Grove. But it is sad to not see them anymore. Did you ever go there and get ice cream?
I did. It had been a while. I did have a fantastic bowl of ice cream there that always stuck with me. It was a green apple ice cream, scoop of green apple ice cream. It was gritty. It had like a green apple, like a
Mm.
real fresh apple texture to it, next to a scoop of cinnamon ice cream that had caramel drizzled over the top. And for some reason, this was like 15 years ago, that bowl of ice cream stuck with me as being this amazing thing from Serendipity. It was like they only had it as a special, like the time I was there. I never saw it ever again. But it was amazing. It's always been kind of one of those like, I wish somebody would do that again. I think I even pitched that to Tamara Key from Clementine's when we had her on the podcast. I was like, Serendipity, the green apple ice cream once, that was so good, just because I want
Oh,
somebody to do that again.
well,
Uh,
I'm sure if you talk to Becky from Serendipity, she could do that again for you. Um,
I'm sure.
what? Yes. Well, here's what I'll tell you what I love about it. So if you haven't followed them, if you follow them on their social media, they do a name of the day where if your name comes up, you get to go and get a free scoop of ice cream. And my kids love that. So we're just going to have to make a trip to the Grove to visit them in their new location. But they were one of the hidden gems that's no longer there. What are some other
Well,
hidden
I don't want
gems?
to. I don't want to move into hidden gems yet because I don't skip past Rock Hill, because there's a heavy hitter in Rock Hill that I don't want to miss. And the reason why I don't
Right.
want to miss them is because I think at this point I own stock in them based upon the amount of money that my wife and her friends have spent there, which is Katie's Pizza and Pasta in Rock Hill.
Ah, yes.
Um, I mean, I've spent a good amount of money there too. Because the food is fantastic and spot on every time. But literally anytime my wife is like, "Hey, I'm gonna meet up with some of the girls," we're going to Katie's. That's always the answer, and it's amazing because it's in a fairly nondescript strip mall area right there in Rock Hill, on the corner of McKnight and Manchester. But when you go in there, you would not know. It's a fun space on the inside. The service is impeccable, and the food is just divine. They do great things with burrata, fantastically colorful burrata. They recently just added an appetizer that's these really really crispy fingerling potatoes with a cheesy fundito dip that you can pour
Mm.
on it or dip them in. That like really, I mean, who doesn't need crispy fingerling potatoes with cheesy fundito dip? I mean, it's the kind of things you need. And then there's the pizzas and the pastas and the seasonal things that they do, and great drinks, and it just is a really well run operation and restaurant with great flavors that people love. Meatball pizza is fantastic. The clam pizza is fantastic. The roasted chicken pizza is fantastic. It's I've eaten a lot of it, and it's all really really good. So that's a
Yes,
heavy
well,
hit.
you are definitely, we can definitely tell that your stock is in Katie's Pizza with that review that you just gave them. And not to mention that she's also like expanded her frozen pizza line too. So you can not just go to her store, but like there's a wonderful variety that you can make in your home too, in case you can't make it out. And she
Yep.
keeps transforming her patio, which is awesome.
All
All
right,
right,
now we can
so
talk about hidden gems. Sorry,
hidden
I had to.
gems.
It was such a heavy hitter for me. I had to go back. Sorry, hidden gems.
You're good. No, you're good. I'm happy because I'm staying in the little bubble of Webster Groves. Thank you for expanding us out to Rock Hill. So
Well,
for
then
me,
I'll go first. Then, if you want to
go
stay in Rock
first.
Hill,
No,
Amis Pizza in Rock Hill, hidden gem galore. And if you're a pizza fan, you know it's not a hidden gem. You know about it. Um, but my kids love Amis Pizza. It used to be a Tilania's Pizza many, many years ago in Rock Hill. Now it's an Amis. They have deep dish pizza, Chicago style. They have St. Louis style pizza. They have New York style pizza. But they also have pastas. They have one of the best house salads, actually. They have this really like chunky Parmesan creamy Parmesan house dressing. I don't know what it is. It's not like any other dressing that I've ever had in my entire life. But they have deep fried croutons and a very basic house salad of like iceberg lettuce, ropes Provel, a couple black olives, maybe a pepperoncini, and these fried croutons and this amazing thick Parmesan dressing that is just so tasty. And I can't go there and not get a salad, which is odd for me, the king of desserts over here. But I love their salad. I love Ami's salad, love it. Or a sausage deep dish pizza.
Well, thank you for reminding us all that you are getting your fair share of vegetables in your diet between your bread puddings and your pizzas, that you're still getting some
Orange
greens.
bread pudding. There's fruit on there.
Bread
Orange bread
pudding.
pudding.
Okay, so my hidden gem in this area is actually it's called May Pop Garden Shop. And it's just this little itty
Love
bitty
it.
greenhouse. It's not an itty bitty, but it's a greenhouse and a coffee shop in one. So how could you not fall in love with it? It is so hard for me not to walk out of there and spend hundreds of dollars and buy new plant buddies for my house and drink coffee. But it is quaint. It is cute. During the pandemic, they did a really good job of taking the pivot. I remember going there and buying. We had a teacher that was a plant lover, so we went and bought him a passport, and he loved that place because their coffee's great. They've got great pastries, and then you get to be around plants. So how can you go wrong with that? And then
I
I
love
think
it.
the other one,
I love a place where you can eat and do something else at the same time.
yeah,
Like I love where you can eat and play video games, or you can eat and read a book, or you can eat and shop for plants. They're 2 for 1. It's entertainment and food, like dinner theater only for plants. It works
yeah,
for me.
yeah. And I know we've got it on our list as like a little hidden gem, the clover and the bee. I think between all of the olive and oak brands, this one is like my favorite breakfast place. It is so good. Their cinnamon roll is delicious. It's so hard for me to pick just one thing, but they've got like a salmon and lox plate that is fantastic. I mean, every time I go there, I think I order like 2 entrees, 3 drinks. My minimum for brunch is 3 drinks, 2 entrees, and something sweet to go with it. So all
Mhm.
for myself.
I'm gonna jump back into Rock Hill for another hidden gem, and that's Himalayan Hut. If you like Indian
Yes.
food or Nepalese cuisine, um, I'm hoping they're listening or somebody's listening. And I'm sure it's
Yes.
because of the pandemic, but they had a lunch buffet for a couple of years before the pandemic that I used to love to go to. Where if I was working from home for a day, my wife was working from home, we'd be like, let's go to Himalayan Hut for lunch. Because you had, not a huge buffet of options, but when it comes to Indian and Nepalese cuisine, you don't need a huge buffet. You kind of want to have some options and play around and try some things that you don't aren't going to order off a menu, but you're going to be like, what is that? It looks tasty. I want to try it. And then you start learning about the cuisine. You start understanding it better, appreciating it better. You can know what palak paneer is. You can know what butter chicken is. You can get some naan. You can get all these different things that you wouldn't normally think to get, but you can try a little bit of all of them because it is a buffet, and it's all really well done. It's the sister restaurant to Himalayan Yeti. If anybody's familiar with that restaurant, same family. And it's really, really good stuff. So if you're looking for kind of Indian cuisine or something outside the box in the area, Himalayan Hut on Manchester and Rock Hill, delicious stuff.
I love it. Well, and then we also have the Sushi Station, which I think is a super fun hidden gem because their sushi's just phenomenal. It's so good. It's down on Gore Avenue. It's kind of hidden away. But what they offer, their I mean, their rolls, their spicy edamame that they have. You can't ever go wrong with the goizas. And then you just recently went to a place that you did that slow motion dumpling dunk that I think tantalized everyone's taste buds to go. Where was that at, Joe?
Oh, Chiang Mai, which is a
Oh,
Thai restaurant in Old Orchard in Webster. That's fairly new in the last. I think they opened probably 2 years ago. Really surprised. I went there with a coworker thinking that it was going to be just a upscale. It's gotten good reviews. It's on a lot of lists this year of the best new restaurants in the last year or two. I thought it was going to be Chinese food, upscale Chinese food. It's not. It is better. It is high quality food that was and the things that surprised me, I asked for like an iced tea, and they were like, we don't have iced tea, but we have a Thai iced tea if you want that. It was creamy and it was
Oh yeah.
orange, and like it was really sweet and had just this natural fruit flavor to it. It was just beautiful stuff, and bright flavors. One of the most colorful things I've eaten in a while, which was surprising. You don't walk into an Asian restaurant thinking you're going to eat bright colors necessarily, and it was very bright flavors. I mean, I walked away being like, I'm coming back to this place. I'm not going to go to the strip mall Chinese place and get some orange chicken and broccoli beef. I'm going here to get real, authentic, well loved Thai food.
I love it. I love it. So I'm actually going to voyage out to Rock Hill and shout out to one of my hidden gems, and that is Nacho Mamas. I know
love
you're a big Hacienda fan, which isn't too much farther down the road in Brentwood, but I got to tell you, Nacho
No,
Mamas
that's
is
in Rock Hill. Why? How did we not put that on the pillars list? What's wrong with me? Oh my goodness! Oh my gosh! I feel like I've let my
this is
family
like
down.
blasphemy. Yes,
This
yes,
is
your very
blasphemy that
first
I've gotten
podcast.
this far. Hacienda was a part of my food journey in the very first episode, and I made it this far.
From utero.
From you, literally from the womb. How do we not put that as a longtime pillar? That is such a, oh my gosh, we got to start over. We got to go back to the beginning. We need to re-record the intro. Hacienda on Manchester is a longtime pillar of the community and food community. What is wrong with me? Oh my gosh.
All right. Well, you can. I'm sure that your pittance, like, pay your dues tonight. Order dinner from there. Offer them your apologies.
I'm so upset. I'm upset by this.
Joe right now, his head is hanging low. You could just tell this is like virtually upset.
I'm really upset.
So if you haven't been to Haciendas or you don't know about it, it is this gigantic Mexican restaurant, multiple rooms. There's always something happening, a huge patio. I mean, this is the place in the area to go and celebrate Cinco de Mayo. That place is packed. There's no parking on the side streets to go anywhere. But also down the road, there's a little place called Nacho Mamas, which I love.
Which is good, and it's good. It's good for what it is, which is drive-through Mexican, and their chicken nachos are fantastic. And do they still do drive-through margaritas?
They do.
Get drive-through margaritas, folks. Drive-through margaritas.
It is one of those places where I'm like driving around. I'm like, I don't want to get your classic Wendy's or Taco Bell's. I want to get something that I can take home, but I don't have to go in. I don't have to call ahead. And Nacho Mamas is that for me. And I love it because you can buy a half chicken, and then you have like a half roasted chicken that you can break apart into your own little taco mix. Their fajitas are fantastic. Can't go wrong with it. So, Joe, you're
I'm still upset. I am really upset. Like, I feel like I have let let's move on to upcoming and new things. Okay. Oh, gosh. This is hard, you guys. There's a lot of good food in the area, and that was a big part of my childhood, and I missed it in this whole rundown of this episode. Completely.
But you know what,
Joe, the big thing in my life.
In our very first podcast, you gave it such a shout out because this was the very pinnacle of your start of your food journey. So you haven't let them down. You haven't let them down. You gave them their good due time as the launch of who you are.
I know there are people that do not like Hacienda. I'm well aware of it's a very, people that love it or you hate it. I happen to love it. It's a thing. It's a family thing. I don't know. Okay, moving on. Right. I'll get over it. So upcoming and new things in Webster, Rock Hill area.
So I know one, which I ate at yesterday, and because this is what I crave, and I call this my like Chick-fil-A effect. They're closed on Sunday and Monday, and I crave them every Sunday and Monday. But it's Didi Mao, which is the Vietnamese place that just opened. I get their vermicelli bowl with pork, and then I get the Vietnamese vinegar, and just eat. I mean, this is like, do not talk to me. Leave me alone. Let me savor this. Their spring rolls are fantastic.
Like their bao.
Oh yes, so
the
good.
bao buns. Yes.
And they've got Thai tea. They're phenomenal. And then next door to them too, which wasn't on our list, but I went there for brunch multiple times now. But it is Layla's and the Bad Eggs. So Layla's redid their menu, and they're focused more on brunch and lunch service. But I love it because it's like pop culture. When you go in there, the place is just, it's like you feel like you're walking into like your childhood favorites. Like their menu has all these fun names. I got the Rob Foreman. It was my breakfast sandwich that I got this weekend. You know, they have a salad called the Keanu Leaves after like Keanu Reeves. It's they have done a fantastic job of putting a play on their menu items and, you know, Hollywood fun cultural references that I think people in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s would definitely get. And their food is fantastic too.
I love it.
What's your new up and coming that you think is?
I like Perennial on Lockwood. I like their beers.
Yeah.
I think they've got a really, really neat space also. They have a really nice, I think it's an edamame dip that has fried pitas that come with it that are mwah. I love a good fried pita. And then down the street, I know you're going to talk about the park more, but I like their snow cones, and I'll tell a quick story about why I like them. So growing up, there used to be a place in Webster called Hogaboom's that was a snow cone stand. It's where the Jets Pizza is now. There used to be a Hogaboom's was what it was called. You go there and it was kind of that the upscale snow cone place where they had like 35 40 flavors, and there's my dog, sorry, and all these different flavors, and you could get like a root beer float or a wedding cake flavor, and we used to go there all the time and get great snow cones. Well, the Parkmore has brought that back and has snow cones, so my kids like to go there and get, you know, the tiger blood snow cones or the blue raspberry green apple swirl snow cones, and I can get a root beer float snow cone with the sweetened condensed milk on the top to make it really creamy. I love that.
Yeah, and the cool thing is that so they have the restaurant where you sit down, where you get your burgers. Their onion rings are great. I've actually eaten the onion rings cold. I think they're better cold than they are hot and fried. That's like
no.
But you no.
I disagree.
No. We had it at a trivia night and we had it sit for a little bit. But you know, sometimes when you let fried food sit, it kind of like it condensates and it gets mushy. The batter that they put on there, it was still crispy and the flavor was still great in it. I thought they were delicious. But the thing with the snow cones, what I will add to it is they actually have a walk-up window. So you don't have to go into the restaurant and order and sit down. You can walk up to their window and you can order their snow cones. And they also have adult version snow cones too. So if you're having a little hard day and you need a little shot of something in your snow cone, that's an option at the park more.
May have done that a few times during the pandemic already.
Oh goodness. Well, Joe, I'm fairly certain that you and I have covered a large amount of area in a very short of time. If our listeners cannot tell already, that the food scene in Webster Groves, Rock Hill area, this little bubble is phenomenal. We have a special guest that we're going to bring on as well, Rebecca Now, who is going to share with us, longtime resident of Webster Groves, but she's also in charge of the Chamber of Webster Groves, Rock Hill, and Shrewsbury. So let's bring her on and hear from her.
All right. All right, everybody, we are back. Lydia and I have talked all about some of the heavy hitters, the pillars of the Webster Groves, Shrewsbury, Rock Hill community, some of our hidden gems, some of the up-and-coming things that we've seen, but we are excited to have a guest with us that is really going to take us, I think, behind the scenes of where Webster Groves has been, where Shrewsbury, Rock Hill, the whole area, where it's going, what are the stories that are there, and that is Rebecca Now, the executive director of the Webster Groves, Shrewsbury, and Rock Hill Chamber of Commerce. So welcome, Rebecca, to the Chew and Lou podcast.
Yeah,
thank you so much. Glad to be here.
We are very, very excited to have you here. And again, like I said, Lydia and I have talked. We are both, you know, obviously local to the area, living just down the street from Webster Groves in the Glendale area. So we are out and about at restaurants all the time in the Webster Groves area. But we have lots of questions about what's coming in Webster Groves, what's happening in Webster Groves, and we're hoping you have lots of answers for us.
Well, I'll do my best.
Yeah, well, and Joe, because I have not born and raised here like the two of you have. I'm interested in some of the things that once were and kind of things that have shaped Webster Grove too, because I think that plays a huge part into just the culture of it. So I'm excited, Rebecca. I'll just start it off. You run the chamber for that area, as so you're kind of in tune to all the new up and comings and the ones that have been there for a long time. What is the restaurant scene like? Is it a pretty solid scene in Webster as far as like the long-standing pillars? Because Kirkwood had some as their, I think as long as 75 years was the oldest restaurant they had on record.
My goodness, that's a long time. I don't have statistics on exactly how long many of them are. Many of them have turned over and reinvented themselves in terms of what was in that space and what is there now. But it's evolved quite a bit. You know, I went to high school many decades ago at Webster Groves High School, and I remember this spot where the current Balkan Treat Box is. And before Balkan Treat Box, it was Stratton's. And when I was in high school, it was the Webster Grill, which is very similar to Spencer's Grill in Kirkwood. It was a big fry sheet, and they'd make fried eggs and hamburgers. And my high school boyfriend worked there. And that's
yeah.
what it was, the Webster Grill. And I recently, I was part of a Facebook group called Webster Groves Memories. And in preparation for this podcast, I put out a question and I said, what's your favorite memory of food in Webster Groves? And everybody, it was wonderful. I had something like 200 comments on this.
Wow.
It was great to learn everything. And
well, tell us some of those. What do people say? That's fantastic.
Well, I had forgotten about a restaurant that was in the spot where the Art of Entertaining is right now. And the Art of Entertaining is not in Old Orchard or Old Webster off of Lockwood. It is near the railroad tracks between Gore and Gray off of Big Bend. But the Art of Entertaining's been there for a long time, like at least 30 years. But before that, in the 80s, it was King Louie's. And that was sort of a Cyrano's wannabe. They had a Cherry's Jubilee, they had roast beef, and it was like a date place where you would go out for kind of a fun date. I love that place. I totally forgot about it until somebody mentioned it on the post. I said, oh yeah, I love that place. It wasn't open that long, maybe 4 years or something. But most of the people that had memories of Webster Groves said, you know, Webster Groves wasn't known for a food scene. That is really only in the last 15 years that all of our places have turned over. And I really credit the real Cyrano's, the Cyrano's that used to be on DeMunn in Clayton, which if you grew up in St. Louis area, everyone knows the Cyrano's on DeMunn, which is where kids would go for a prom. And that's how I discovered it. It was prom night with my boyfriend, the same one that worked at the Webster Grill.
I grew up with stories of my parents talking about my mom in high school and in college going and getting World's Fair eclairs at Cyrano's after dances at St. Louis U High with my dad. She went to Ursuline. She lived in Richmond Heights. They went to Cyrano's. I mean, many stories. To this day, we still take my mom occasionally to Cyrano's to get World's Fair eclairs because of her memories of that. So absolutely. Sweet. So when you say that, that absolutely tugs at my heartstrings about Cyrano's was one of those things that we talked earlier in the podcast about being a pillar in Webster.
Yeah. I mean, every time I mention to an old friend or a new friend, I said, let's get together for lunch. How about Cyrano's? And they're like, I love Cyrano's. It's the perfect place. I love it for lunch. And if I've got an appetite, having that bread pudding, oh my God, it is the best.
I just had it 2 weeks ago. It was delicious.
Oh.
So now you mentioned the last 15 years really has been kind of a food renaissance in Webster Groves. Was that by design? Was there an effort put out in Webster Groves to say, you know what, we need a stronger food scene. We need a refresh of our food scene here in Webster. Webster already has a lot of things going for it as a community in the St. Louis region. But was there a conscious effort to say food? Or did it just happen naturally based on certain people moving in? Was it when Olive and Oak came in that it started a renaissance? Was it something? What was there a triggering moment?
I think Cyrano's really led the way. I mean, Olive and Oak really is very recent. But one of the drivers for the food scene in my zip code, 63119, is the performing arts. I mean, the repertory theater, the before and after enjoyment of staying in Webster Groves after you've been to the theater. The other one is CJ Muggs, which is a wonderful place before or after a performance. And then opera theater, the opera theater with the picnic, or you can go before and after somewhere. And I always love to take a boxed picnic lunch from the Art of Entertaining when I go to opera theater. There's also the music school. There's the Webster University Conservatory. So there's a lot of performing arts, and somehow the restaurant scene just goes along with that. And it just evolved entrepreneur by entrepreneur by entrepreneur. There was no concerted effort by any organization to say, hey, let's do food. But it just happened that way.
Yeah, when you say that, it makes me think about the Webster Grove Garden Cafe, right? Like that the owners of it were both musicians and songwriters and performers, and then they broke their way through into making this wonderful coffee shop that's so cute to step in, and you could see that with just like the decor on the inside of it.
Yeah.
And that way too, like if you ever visit Webster Grove, you'll notice that you have these signs on top of your lampposts. What is it? The Center of Art is, what does it read? It's usually art is Webster.
The City of Arts.
The City of Arts. And you have a huge art festival there too every year, don't you?
We have a lot of art events, if you will. Now, the City of Arts came out of an award that the City of Webster Groves won in 2013. They were recognized by the state as a creative community. And somehow the name City of the Arts stuck. And there are certain citizens that are really saying that's how we should brand ourselves. And part of it is the performing arts I just mentioned. And also, we are a community with Webster Arts, which is a foundation, a nonprofit. They just moved into a lovely business spot and have an art gallery. And they are the people that put on the festival you're talking about, Lydia, which used to be called Art and Air, but it's Webster Arts Festival. And that's an outdoor art fair on Eden Seminary grounds at Bompart and Lockwood. And that's a big deal. It's always the first weekend in June. And of course, we didn't have it last couple of years because it always just fell when there was some sort of COVID scare. Even though it was outside, it was right as bad publicity was happening, which is very detrimental to the artists that rely on traveling art fairs to make their living. And I'm sure they will revive it this year. But so we've got Webster Arts, a foundation, and then we have several galleries. You've got Grafika Art, and she does artful conversations, and she showcases many local artists like Patrick Murphy and Marion Bradley and others. And then Green Door Art Gallery is on North Gore. And that's another place where the arts intersect with the food scene, because you have so many great little restaurants on North Gore. And you've got the Jazz Festival. We have a street dance. So there are lots of activities that make it a fun destination.
Fun.
I see that all the time in going through, in driving through all the time. There's always a street banner that's like, this is what's coming up in Webster Groves this week.
Exactly.
So looking outside, your Chamber of Commerce that you represent is Webster Groves, Shrewsbury, and Rock Hill. We talked a little bit earlier on our podcast about some of those other areas outside of the Webster Groves, Old Orchard, and downtown Webster proper. Where are you eating outside of Webster Groves? What's going on in Shrewsbury? What's going on in Rock Hill? Rock Hill is just down the road from us. My dad lives in Rock Hill. I eat a lot in Rock Hill. And I talked earlier about some of there's a lot of hidden gems I feel like along Manchester Road and Rock Hill. So what are you eating in those places?
Well, I'm kind of a, let's see, big fish in a small pond. I am very parochial in my dining, and I don't get out much. I do get over to Kirkwood when I want Greek food or something like that, or French. Ooh, Greek or French. Two of my favorite restaurants are over in Kirkwood. Shrewsbury is pretty much a dining desert right now, and I believe they're going to get in a restaurant soon. They are going to get in a Dunkin' Donuts, if that counts.
Well, hey, that counts.
Yeah.
Everybody needs a donut.
Yeah, everyone needs a donut, and some people are very big fans of their coffee. Now, Rock Hill, of course, has some really fabulous gems. You've got Ferratos for Italian, and down the street you've got what's the other one? There's another Italian that survived the pandemic, Amaretti's. Yeah, Amaretti's, which it's a relative of people that had a place on the hill, but he sold groceries during the early pandemic as well as food. So he could stay open, and he avoided the shutdown in the beginning because he was making and selling bread and food that people needed. So he was considered like a grocery store, which I think was fantastic. Now, Shrewsbury has a zillion grocery stores, which was good during the pandemic. And then Rock Hill lost their Lucky's Market right before the shutdown, but they're getting an Aldi's, so they're going to get something soon.
We're excited about that Aldi's. I love Aldi's for the stuff for charcuterie tray. It's a fantastic charcuterie shopping destination.
Oh, another hidden gem in Rock Hill is Nacho Mamas. Nacho Mamas, very popular Mexican place.
That is like my go-to, like needing something that's quality, but I can go through a drive-through to pick it up. Like, I'm sure my kids are sometimes like, Mom, why Nacho Mamas again? This is the third time this week, but you can't go wrong. Their salsa is so good. Oh, yes.
I know there is one restaurant in Webster that's been there 30 years that I just dined, took a friend for a birthday celebration, and that is Big Sky. And I love Big Sky. 30 years they've been in the same location, which is amazing.
That's awesome.
I think the only one that would beat that now is probably CJ Muggs at Gore and Lockwood. And they're a very popular, classic restaurant, great variety, the best grass-fed burger I've ever had. Yeah, I went through a keto diet phase, and then I was having naked burger, lettuce wrap burgers, and they have the best. I cannot reproduce it no matter what I do.
Awesome.
I love it. So you mentioned kind of the food desert in Shrewsbury, and looking at the overall area, what is missing? You said you go to Kirkwood for Greek and French. When we did the podcast for Kirkwood, we talked a lot about some of the French restaurants there. They have a very strong French restaurant scene there, Cafe Provençal, a couple other things. What, in looking at Webster, what holes are missing? What's like the, what we need? We need one of these.
Well, I've always thought Italian, but I guess I can go to Rock Hill for that. And you can go to the hill, and you can go down Watson Road in the city. There's, it's not a very far drive for Italian. What seems to be up and coming, which is interesting to me, and you've probably seen this, the decline of Chinese food. I mean, 25 years ago, Chinese food was everywhere, and independently owned Chinese restaurants by little mom and pops everywhere were one of the biggest restaurant categories. I couldn't believe it. And they've kind of gone through a decline. And now in Webster, we have a new Thai restaurant coming in. They're kind of on a dry run right now. I'm going to eat there tomorrow night, but it's Mayu, and that's Thai, and it's right next to another Thai restaurant called Chiang Mai, which is still Thai, but it's a different region of Thailand. It's northern Thailand, which I love. And I'm just like thrilled. There are two Thai restaurants next door to each other.
Yeah.
I ate Chiang Mai last week. It was delicious.
Yeah. I was going to say, to comment to the decline in Chinese restaurants, I think as the diversity of Asian food is happening more and more in our culture, that A lot of Asian restaurants. I mean, when you hear Miley's story of how they were a Vietnamese family that sold Chinese food, we're getting more and more. Like you have a Vietnamese DD Mao there.
Mhm.
You're getting Thai. Like the other Asian cuisines are becoming able to stand on their own, where they don't have to have the regular Americanized beef and broccoli and cashew chicken and
Right,
General
right.
Mills. They can have their own. And I'm excited about that. So I'm excited that there's a Thai option, a second Thai option, regional, because you also have
Yes,
Gorilla Street Food, which is amazing Filipino food. That's a wonderful representation of another Asian culture
I
in
know.
Webster.
In fact, that whole Old Orchard area, you now have two Thai, one Filipino. There's a Vietnamese across the street right next door to Starbucks. And then, of course, you
Mhm.
mentioned DD Mai, which is at the other end of Webster.
Yeah.
So that's a lot.
And
You know, the St. Louis region, way back when, we're talking the 50s, and this, of course, I read about this. Um, chop suey places, and you'll still see some remnants of those in pockets of the city. That was very, very popular. And chop suey is really an American term. There is no such thing that exists in Asia, but it was just what Americans thought of as Chinese food. It was pretty
Mhm.
funny.
There used to be a Rock Hill chop suey right there where the CVS is now in Manchester and McKnight, right next to
Right.
the old Rock Hill City Hall was Rock Hill chop suey, and we used to get food from there quite often when I was younger.
And
But yeah,
I've gotta mention Cajun food too, while we're in the neighborhood of Old Orchard, because Highway 61 Roadhouse has been there for a long, long time. And they do great parties, live music, lights, and fabulous Cajun food. So it's just a very lively atmosphere. And that building, I remember it from high school. The actual building was Street Side Records. So
yeah.
a record store converted into a party Cajun place. So it's pretty cool. The poor waitresses and waiters have to go down steps to get to the kitchen. So they get a workout.
We used to go to the Ben Franklin across the street and get penny candy at the Ben Franklin, and then go look at CDs at Street Side Records because I went to Mary Queen of Peace grade school in Webster Groves, and then we after school, if we had half days, we'd all run into downtown Webster and make it all the way down to Old Orchard if we had the legs for it. And that was our fun spring afternoons, was penny candy and Street Side Records.
Cool. Oh, another one
So
is sushi. We have a lot of sushi too. Well, I mean, we have Sushi Station. I think that's the only one, but another Asian food, to Lydia's
And
point.
then you got Balkan Treat Box, so you're representing the Balkan region. So you do have a tremendous amount of food diversity in a fairly small strip of St. Louis.
Oh, yes,
But then
absolutely.
and then but then there's the standard bearers of CJ Muggs, and then the new standard bearers of like Frisco Bar Room and the Annex, which Lydia and I talk about ad nauseum sometimes about things at the Annex that we love to go and buy and
Well,
try and eat.
and there's also Robust, which is small plates and fabulous wines.
yes,
And I tell you, the one thing that I love so much, if we could get out of winter and into spring here, is there's so much patio dining available.
there is.
There must be a 18 restaurants where you could eat a wonderful meal outside, between Frisco, the Annex, Roadhouse, Big Sky, you name it, and just go down the street to CJ Muggs, to Sushi Station, to the block. You can get it all.
I love it.
I love it.
So if I'm someone that has never visited Webster Groves, like what is something you'd recommend for me for a first time to get a great picture of the food scene and also the beautiful culture that you have there?
Well, I remember when I had a high school reunion and a couple of my girlfriends came in, and I drove one of my friends around, and we had lunch at Frisco Bar Room, and we dined on the rooftop. This was in a nice warm October. So I love that because you've got this vista of the street, which has evolved, and that's kind of pretty. Another visitor friend, we did sort of progressive dining, if you will, to two of my favorite places. And one is a Robust wine bar, which is on West Lockwood, and we have wine and appetizers. And I said, let's go for dessert. And we drove down to Cyrano's and had a fabulous dessert. So you can do progressive dining too.
You can make it a good pub crawl. We're doing that for a mom's group. We're doing a little mom's pub crawl.
Cool.
So, but I love it because you do, like you said, there's a lot of great restaurants and great variety within walking distance. So how's the parking in Webster? I know that was one of the touch subjects with Kirkwood.
Well, is it a problem? I don't think anyone has driven around the block 10 times and then left and gone somewhere else. There is parking available. And in some peak times, you might have to look for it a little bit, but there's parking. I mean, if we build much more, it's going to be difficult. But we bring in thousands of people for the jazz festival, and they all find a parking place.
Well, my final question for you before Lydia wraps us up, if she's got something else to ask, this whole podcast that we're doing, we're visiting neighborhoods and kind of walking through. And this first one we're started with was Kirkwood and Webster, because this is where Lydia and I kind of sit. We live here. This is the neighborhood that we are a part of. We know a lot of our listeners are in this area just because they're friends of ours, and that's how a lot of this started. There's a lot of history between Kirkwood and Webster. We talked about some of that, Lydia and I, at the top of our podcast when we started it. But what makes Webster, in your mind, being a representative of Webster, better than Kirkwood? If you had to say, you know what, this is why Webster and not Kirkwood, not to like say because we're going to win the church day game. Because I have a younger brother.
All right, a better question would be, and I don't like the better than and superiority, because I think the two communities have more in common than any sort of superiority, right? So they have more, Kirkwood has more businesses in general. We both have fabulous food scenes, and our history is so much the same. We're both started before the Civil War. We are both train towns, and we have more in common. And I'm when I describe myself, I say I'm an inside the 270 person. I'm not going to go beyond the 270. I like the older communities that are inside the 270. And one of the only mass shootings in Missouri history was at Kirkwood City Hall. And we care about Kirkwood, and there is a lot we can do together, and we are more similar than we are dissimilar, and neither is better.
I love that. That's great.
And I love that because it's just another example where food is going to really bring us together and bring us world peace. We say that all the time, that if anything's going to bring world peace, it's going to bring food. And if on this podcast, food's going to bring Kirkwood and Webster together, so be it. And that's all I have to say. I love it.
Well, and I think you're right. We do serve the same community. I mean, I Google mapped one day. I said, okay, we're going to take our bikes. So where are we going to go? And I'm exactly 1.1 miles away from downtown Webster and 1.1 miles away from downtown Kirkwood. So it's like, well, we're intercrossing. We could go either way. And I love it. But I think there's so much beauty between the two. Even though we're 3 miles away in distance from our downtowns, everybody is there's a sense of community and a sense of pride and a sense of love. And it's great to live here. I've enjoyed it. Not to mention the food is fabulous. It's not that hard.
The food is really fabulous.
Take people out. So yes. Well, Rebecca, we want to thank you so much for your time today and your insight. We have loved learning so much from you today, and hope that it'll encourage others to come out and explore Webster and all that you guys have to offer.
Okay. All right. I'm pleased to be on. Thank you.
So, Lydia, that was a really awesome interview with Rebecca. She clearly knows her stuff in her chamber district, and clearly has eaten at a lot of places.
But I think as a longtime resident, this woman has got some insight far beyond our reach. So I appreciate that as well. So what do you think? Webster, Kirkwood? Where are you at, Joe?
This is going to be hard for me. So, as a longtime Kirkwood, Glendale area resident, it's hard for me to say, but I'm going to throw Kirkwood a bone first and say I think Kirkwood wins in the bakery area. I think when you throw out Nathaniel Reed, you throw out Pioneer Bakery, you throw out Strange Donuts, I think they've got the bakery scene locked down. And as a bakery lover of baked goods and donuts, that speaks a lot to me. However, on the overall ratings for restaurants, I don't think there's I don't know that Kirkwood's got great stuff. It's great. There's a lot of great things coming in. It's super exciting. I think Webster, from an originality standpoint, edges it out just a little bit. That's what I mean. Congrats to them. I got to give credit where credit's due. But when you throw in Balkan Treat Box, when you throw in Chiang Mai coming in there, when you throw in Olive and Oak, I mean, we're talking heavy hitters. And Kirkwood's got heavy hitters. Webster's heavy hitters, I think, hit just a little bit harder. That's where I am.
All right.
That's where I am. What do you think?
It's hard because I feel like the two of them balance each other out very well. Like you said, the bakeries are in Kirkwood, but when I'm looking for great Asian options, I'm looking over at Webster. So it just depends. You can go to either side of the two. The two have done a fabulous job of balancing each other out between great places to pick, one fancy, one fine dining, like there's a great quick and easy. So I mean, I think just in general, I'm just thankful to live in a quality food scene. This bubble is pretty tight with options.
Amen. And it is true. It's a symbiotic relationship. I mean, it's if I had a good singing voice, I'd get up and start singing "Food will bring us together." I mean, like it does. It that's what it is. And Kirkwood and Webster, it's coming together around the food.
I love it. I love it. Well, folks, thank you so much for joining us today on this delicious day in the neighborhood as we journeyed into Webster Grove, Rock Hill, and Shrewsbury.
Your hosts for the podcast are Joe Prosperi
and Lydia Gwynn.
Our producer is Veronica Moheski, and this has been a production of 9PBS in St. Louis. Special thanks to our guest, Rebecca Now, the Executive Director of the Webster Groves, Shrewsbury, and Rock Hill Chamber of Commerce.